So good evening to all. I'm Vedashri. I'm a part of OWASPSASTRA. So as you can see, the title of this session is quite self-explanatory. Cracking the code, unveiling the untapped opportunities in cybersecurity. So people always think cybersecurity is all about like wearing a black hoodie and hacking things, but it's much more than that. So today we have a very special speaker, Armando, who's a co-founder and director for the Maryland Innovation and Security Institute. He is also a director and the technical program director for the MISI's Dreamport Cyber Solutions Accelerator. He is also one of the esteemed speakers in the RSA conference. He leads the critical infrastructure cybersecurity team, tech outreach, and partner engagement support functions for the MISI and Dreamport. So he has over 25 years of executive management, sales, software engineering, network engineering, cyber analytics solutions development. Prior experiences include Vice President Business Development and Cybersecurity for the SSI Guardian, a leading provider for the security training, active shooter, and a cyber risk assessments and solutions for cooperations, government, and educational market. So I can go on and about his achievements. So I'm just going to stop here and let the session begin.
Thank you so much. And thank you guys for taking some time out of your evening to join. Well, you guys had a very enthusiastic crowd and a team of leaders there. So I'm happy to join you on a beautiful Saturday here in South Florida. And thank you for the introduction. Just a little bit of update on my background. Yes, about 4.5, almost 5 years ago, I co-founded with another business partner, the Maryland Innovation and Security Institute, and helped to grow that into a global sort of brand and presence in the fields of cybersecurity innovation, which covers all manner of cybersecurity, the cybersecurity universe, primarily in support of the United States government, in particular its military, helping it to find problems, helping it to find solutions to problems, and then also helping to train and prepare the US cyber government teams and military teams to be better prepared to deal with the constant change and influx and advances in cyber adversarial technology that threatens not only the US, but US partners like your country there in India. Your prime minister was recently here, and India is an important both economic, military, and bastion of talented individuals such as yourselves. So about a couple of months ago, I departed that organization, and I'm launching some new things and looking at new career options. So Missy was a non-for-profit. My background is primarily in the for-profit world. And so myself and my co-founder turned it over to some other folks who now are responsible for the success of the organization. And he and I have moved on to different adventures and different challenges. Still heavily involved in the area of cyber, in cybersecurity, cyber innovation, and cyber for national security. So you guys are in college. One of the organizations that I still lead is a organization that I should say I'm a member of the board of, more specifically, is that organization that I created with some friends and some partners back in 2012, 13 or so, to mentor young people in the area of technology, particularly young people from underserved communities, young people that may not all go to college, or that may go to college, but we're struggling to get there. And the idea was to provide mentorship in terms of the soul, provide mentorship in terms of the mind, and then the heart, and then technical skills, so that in the event that they did go to college, they could develop employable skills in technology, particularly in the area of cybersecurity, software engineering, networking, those kinds of things. And since 2012 or so, the organization has been doing that. That organization is called the GBC Academy. Website, the GBC Academy, all one word, .org. Again, it's a non-for-profit. Currently, by the way, we are doing a short boot camp on another area of cyber that I'll talk a bit more about, disinformation and misinformation. So if you go to the website, take a look at it. You may want to register for that if it's available. I forget how it's currently structured. There may be a small fee or no fee, but I'm not 100% sure how it's structured, but it is put on by just a sort of a genius of a person who has been focused in the area of open source intelligence and threat actors on the internet, and essentially work with us and myself personally to develop a customized open source based and some other tools based course. So it's fascinating. The people that are taking it and have previewed the course are extremely fascinated by it. And I'll start there. This is a great pivot into why cybersecurity is so broad and not just about people in hoodies sitting on keyboards, and that image that we see. We recently lost Kevin Mitnick. I don't know if you guys were familiar with the legendary Kevin Mitnick, who is another thing that I talk about, people that are just organically talented. I'm happy that you guys are going to college and you're getting your education, but not everyone can afford college. So people like Kevin Mitnick and another guy by the name, he used to go by the name Sabu, another famous hacker. Unfortunately, they use their organic God-given talents to do illegal hacking, and then when they were caught, a bit converted to the good side, the white hat side of hacking, and then contributed their talents that way. Kevin Mitnick, God rest his soul. Look him up. Legendary hacker and then teacher to industry and academia and those that could benefit from his just infinite well of talent. And he passed away earlier this week at his home in Las Vegas. So God rest his soul. And what I wanted to talk to you about was the diversity of careers in cybersecurity. So let's talk about how I started. Disinformation is a very growing trend. Your country, who is a democratic country, the US, which is a democratic country, the French, the Brits, we all strive consistently to provide fair and equal opportunity for you to express who you want to lead your country, or if it comes to voting on policies for your country. Well, adversarial countries in the world that may want to influence India or the US or the United Kingdom or the French or other countries, smaller countries, bigger countries, have learned really, really, really well that the human is the easiest person to hack by developing very legitimate looking forms of information that are really disinformation. The way disinformation and malign influence is working today, it's a combination of psychology, a combination of legit, truthful information mixed in with a healthy dose of basically lies or disinformation, designed to get you to first connect to what looks legitimate, but then absorb what's not legitimate, and essentially designed to have you vote or act against your own interests. And we all know that in social media, people follow influencers in social media. And I know in India, you guys have a lot of influencers in your culture. And a lot of the adversaries will use wittingly celebrities or other folks to pass on messages of disinformation. Recently in Africa, earlier in the year, there was an election. The adversaries against that election targeted the family of the officials that were running for office. A couple of them were influencers on social media, and unwittingly they passed out information to their followers that created some consternation and some difficulty in terms of public discourse, and even maybe a little bit of rioting in that country as a result of some really, really awful misinformation. They did fake videos, fake information. So, with the advent of AI, I think one of the things that they put out there was the son of one of the wealthy candidates that he had maybe run over someone and edited the video to look like he was at the scene of the accident or something. It was all fake, but it created, a lot of consternation within the political discourse there. So disinformation, misinformation. If you have a background and if you like social media, if you like to hunt down mysteries, if you like artificial intelligence, if you like to write narratives, that's the other word for it, narrative or cognitive intelligence, it is becoming very, very, very huge. The easiest way to create an effect that doesn't require a war or a riot is to influence the population. So Russia knows this very well. China knows this very well. India is a growth sector for this device, the cell phone. While you have a large population, you still have a considerable amount of the population that doesn't have access to the most modern versions of these types of technologies. And the countries that are targeting India or trying to influence India's politics and society know that the developing Indian community is using social media and cell phones to get news and information and then pass that information on. So that is a growing field. In the US here, our militaries and our diplomats are all learning that. We have an organization called ODNI. It's where the Directorate of National Intelligence, they have a division, I think it's called, maybe called FBI or FBM. It's basically a foreign malign influence division that looks for foreign malign influence that's targeting the US. You guys know about the Great Hack, the documentary. Actually, I supported one of the documentaries associated with that. That was about the US election that was hacked using Facebook data, Cambridge Analytica. The Great Hack is based on Cambridge Analytica. As you know, eventually Cambridge Analytica was, I guess, disbanded. US rules, maybe Indian rules in terms of data privacy and social media and the internet aren't as stringent as the UK. The UK and the European Union has led with their GDPR regulations and things like that in terms of protecting users of applications in the internet about how their data is consumed and sold. One of the things that I'll tell you next in terms of areas of cybersecurity that a lot of people don't think about, pattern of life detection, pattern of life recognition and tracking. Disinformation is somewhat related to it, but pattern of life is every time you use an app that's free, it's not free. Every application you load on your phone, that even if you pay a nominal fee for, most people don't read the terms of use on those applications. The bottom line is that those terms of use are saying, thank you for downloading the app, whether it's free, or thank you for subscribing, but here's everything I'm going to do with your data. I'm going to sell it. I may track you. I may connect to other apps on your phones. I may monitor your GPS on your phone so I can tell where you are at any moment. And then I'm going to sell all that information about where you and your phone travel and what you do on your phone in terms of your browsing history, your likes and your dislikes. Well, there's a whole industry out there that buys that information. And then that information is then turned to target you or your community from a demographic or an influence perspective. What do you like to buy? What are your politics? What is your family like? What is your browsing history? What do you buy? What restaurants do you go to? Anything you do on the phone, that if you don't find ways to lock and restrict those terms of use that are essentially taking your data off of your phone and then monetizing it. There's a young lady here, I live in the South Florida area when I'm not in other locations, launched a company called based around monetizing your data, basically saying, she created a company that basically looks at how you use your data and then basically cuts agreements with app developers and resellers to say, look, my customer signed up to my app and they can tell how you're using their data and the fact that you're making money in your data. At a minimum, why don't you give a percentage of what you're making back to the person whose information you're selling? So I haven't really tracked the success of that app. It's kind of intriguing to me. I think it would be very difficult to get market share with it, but the idea is novel. The fact that there are people making data off of your app. And not just what you do on your phone. I drive a Tesla. My Tesla is telling Elon Musk and his company everywhere I go. It's tracking the speed, all the cameras are, information is being recorded. It knows where I'm parked. It knows where I'm going. It captures all that information. And I didn't necessarily volunteer. I guess I volunteered by buying a Tesla to provide all that information to Tesla's big data warehouse in the sky, where they can monitor what I'm doing as a driver, where I'm going as a driver, as well as what I'm doing on the apps. As you know, the Tesla has a bunch of apps, that are either custom apps or you can connect your phone and use your apps to the Tesla. All of that is being tracked and stored in a cloud somewhere, and then being used to make decisions about who I am, about the people that I, work, interface with, And just like these apps are making decisions about you. And here is where artificial intelligence comes in, and algorithms, and the building of those algorithms that's a brand new hot area, right? We've all heard about generative AI. I can't tell you how many college students, I'm working with a group of NYU students from India that are working on their graduate degrees at NYU, and they're all about the AI. No question, AI is here. It's here to stay. It's not where most people think it is, but where it is today, it's still very, very dangerous. I'll give you a great example. That's another career. It's like, well, how's that related to cyber? Cyber attacks that are generated by ChatGPT and its other derivatives that are out there. That's one way. I know the US government and organizations like US Cyber Command, General Hawk, who is an incredible individual, had the pleasure and honor of meeting, who has been nominated by the President of the United States to be the next head of the National Security Agency and US Cyber Command. And I wish him all the luck with that nomination. In his testimony, in his public testimony, he mentions the advent of AI and what does that mean to the defense of the nation, to the defense of society, and how do we counter AI? The fact that AI can now be used to write malware, it can be used to draw images, and so on and so forth. The large learning models and those kinds of things. Anybody who's played with ChatGPT knows that as good as it is, it also has a ton of defects, and the people that have not, and it has a ton of limitations in what it can do. It's not quite all the way there, but it's helpful in so many ways. There's so many generative AI applications popping off. Almost every other, internet or cloud-based application is using generative AI for some reason. But also think about generative or AI for military uses and for decision making. If I have all the data that you generated digitally, I call it digital DNA, that when the minute we're born, without our choosing, we're generating digital DNA. When you're born, your birth certificate where you were born is probably digitized and stored somewhere in some electronic file somewhere in the cloud. That's the beginning of your digital DNA. The day you were born, the time you were born, where you were born, and what your name is. Then it goes and grows from that. And as you mature, as you go to school, as you use computers, as you use apps, as you're walking through the city and the cameras are taking images of you, that's digital. That's your digital DNA that you have no control of. But your image is being stored. As we all know, China is a very surveillance-based society. They have some of the most sophisticated cameras. The UK has cameras everywhere as well. I've spent some time in the Middle East and Abu Dhabi and Dubai. Lots of cameras there. Constantly, cameras are taking your images of your car, images of your devices that you're using, and that information is being stored without your permission. Well, all of that's going to some database that when it's combined with what you buy, what you sell, what you've learned, what you say in social media, develops a digital profile of who you are as an individual, whether it be 100% accurate or whether it be just marginally accurate. That data can now be used to make a decision about you. So imagine in cyber what we need to do to protect ourselves from AI being used against us. Who is to say that the algorithm that's making the decision or providing the information is accurate? If you as a student had a really rough night, you hung out with your friends and you went to write an algorithm and it was full of bugs, and that algorithm went into an application that was designed to make a decision or give someone an impression of someone in society, and it's flawed, that person has now been biased by the defects in your algorithm. There are cyber attacks that are now being developed and have been developed. I did a little bit of supervisory work with a brilliant woman that we worked together, Dr. Del Merritt, looking at artificial intelligence for the Joint Artificial Intelligence Center. It's called the JAIC in the US. And one of the projects was to look at the algorithms and applications and say, what was really AI? What was fake AI? And then to just sit back and think about data that's being used to train artificial intelligence models. What happens if someone infects that data and changes that data, and then the algorithm is providing visualization and informatics based on that data that are completely flawed because someone has hacked that data. Someone has changed the way that data represents whether it's you or some other information. So artificial intelligence, huge career opportunity. I can't tell you here in the US, there's everything. You just see the number of jobs that are now artificial intelligence based. And then how you're going to apply artificial intelligence. There's a product that I've become a big fan of, and I'm still studying some, it's called dark trace. I was meeting with a bunch of dark trace customers, and I asked them about the artificial intelligence algorithms that dark trace in their marketing material talks about. Well, those artificial intelligence algorithms, their customers told me, are helping them reduce the amount of labor that it takes and the amount of staff and skill that it takes to make decisions about potential threats to their corporate networks. So think about it. You're going to school, you're learning all these things about cybersecurity. And I don't know how it is in India, but here in the US, I can go into a store, whether it be a grocery store or some other store, and where I used to see humans at the register, there now is just a computer and one human manning 12 registers. One human manning 12, where before there may have been 12 humans. So think a little bit about how AI, from a cyber perspective, is going to change cybersecurity careers in the future. If the algorithm can detect, quarantine, take action, okay, with minimal supervision of maybe one human, why do I need an entire security operations center that's fully staffed to look and hunt down for threats and handle incident response? Artificial intelligence could reduce that area of cybersecurity as it becomes more sophisticated, because now I may only need a handful of humans to do incident response and threat detection and threat analytics and threat mitigation and response, because the artificial intelligence is taking care of it. And these dark trace customers are saying exactly that to me, even though the AI in that tool isn't as extreme as what I just described. They're obviously going to continue to mature that product so that it becomes more and more sophisticated. Now, I've talked to many of PhDs and many of super smart people in the field of artificial intelligence. And the one thing they tell me consistently is that the ability to map and create an algorithm that duplicates human thinking, human cognition, it's just, we're nowhere close to that. Are there computing platforms being developed that are going to accelerate the advent of being able to replicate human cognition and human thinking? Of course there are. I doubt that I will see it in the remaining lifetime that I have. You may see it towards the end of your remaining lifetime. That's just my estimate, that I think, just the neuroscientists and medical professionals that I've talked to, brain surgeons, say the brain is not even understood by the human. And in order for artificial intelligence to understand or replicate human cognition, it has to be taught. At least today, it has to be taught how to understand how the brain thinks. So with that deficit of the fact that there's no one who understands the human brain at even close to maybe 50 or 60%, how do you teach an algorithm to then replicate human cognition? So I've had the exposure to various very senior level scientists in government and the commercial industry that proposed projects to me that said, Armando, we want to take a drone squadron, or a group of drones, and then collectively analyze the images from their camera and from their algorithms, and then have the drones make the decision. This was weapon systems, basically to fire off a weapon. And I remember being in those discussions, I won't name who it was I was in those discussions with. And I'm like, and I'm nowhere as smart as the people who came to me with this problem, but I'm smart enough to know it's like, we're not there yet. You guys really think we're going to get the approval to fire off a weapon, using artificial intelligence? And what we came to was, Armando, you're correct. We misspoke in the concept of having the drone make the decision. What we really want to get to is collecting all the information from the drones, feeding that to a console where there's a human, and then the human makes the final decision to fire the weapon or not to fire the weapon based on the information that the drones have collected. Another area of cyber, AI and autonomous drone vehicles and autonomous drones. I was in London last year, and I won't say who exactly I met with. I visited a particular site, and one of the things is very sophisticated UK government agency was telling me, say, look at the coastline, Armando. What do you see on the coastline? I saw dozens upon dozens of antenna arrays and satellite dishes, and stuff like that, right? And different antennas of one sort or another. And I said, and Armando, look out into the ocean. What do you see? I saw a bunch of ships. I want to look at the lettering on those ships. They're within international waters, and they're all foreign, not all of them, but a lot of them were foreign adversaries of the United Kingdom and the US. Armando, this is what's happening. These boats are coming along the coastline. They're launching these drones, and these drones are surveying our antennas, they're surveying our critical infrastructure, whether it be our power grid, whether it be our ports. And these drones are becoming more and more sophisticated. They're typically based on cheap technology, because in case they lose them, but their ability to transmit what they see, calculate what they see, is becoming more sophisticated. So that's another area of artificial intelligence. Right now, artificial intelligence, where it's had the most success, I've been working with the medical community for the past couple of months on some projects, is in the medical field. The ability to, for instance, take AI, feed it all the data that is known by doctors today about, let's say, breast cancer or any type of cancer, and then having the AI make or inform the physician on a medical decision or the proper way to operate, medical robots to do operations. So here in the US, University of Maryland invested a ton of money in medical AI and imaging. So that's another area. So I spent quite a bit of time on AI, but it's one of the biggest areas that of growth within the cyber community, as confirmed to me, not only by all the people that I've talked to that are looking to do things with AI, but all the investor community. I was in Silicon Valley a couple months ago, and all the big multi-billion-dollar, $100 million and more private equity and venture capital firms were all looking for artificial intelligence technology. And when I was at RSA, the biggest talk at RSA, the biggest topics that got the most attention were the investments that Google and Microsoft and AWS are making to advance the state of artificial intelligence. And that's within artificial intelligence for cyber. So I'll pause there on AI. I'll go to critical infrastructure. I don't know how your university is structured, but a lot of the universities that I work with, as I'm working with some NYU students now, I'm in discussions with another university, actually. As I was on, you saw me on my phone. One of the leads at this university was chatting to me about disinformation in cyber, actually. But one of the things that I've noticed, having worked with hundreds, if not thousands of students over the since 2012, when it comes to cybersecurity, is that our universities here in the US are just now starting to teach critical infrastructure related cyber. So you guys are learning the basics of cyber, and I don't know how you're new to, Wireshark, you're part of the OWASP Foundation, and so on and so forth, right? So you're learning all the basics of cyber, the stuff that everyone kind of gets to learn. But, and you can answer this question later, put it in the chat. Are you guys learning anything about critical infrastructure? So India, the largest population now on Earth, I think India, maybe last month or a month ago, surpassed China in terms of the number of humans that India has. India is very dependent on the rail system. I've visited India and have traveled throughout India, not seen its rail system, but I've studied it. India is very dependent on its rail system. It's part of its commerce. It's part of getting humans from one point to another, getting goods from one place to another throughout your large country. Look at that very, very sad and unfortunate incident where that train derailed in India and there were so many deaths. Imagine the technological ability to prevent those types of derailments, which, in the US, positive train control systems are almost like becoming mandatory here. Europe uses them heavily as well. But imagine the infrastructure that controls the speed of a train, when the track switches so that the train can switch its direction. In France, in the United States, but in London in particular, and in countries like Singapore and other countries, in China and Japan, they're very dependent on very sophisticated compute programmable logical controllers, PLCs, SCADA, IoT, OT devices, operational technology devices, to control the management of trains. I mean, technically, the conductor in these high-speed trains is just there as a fail-safe with some of these train systems, because the combination of the power grid, the satellite systems, the programmable logical controller systems, and the software that controls that pretty much are giving the the conductor and people that are monitoring the train systems at a control center information on where the trains are going, speeds, issues and all those things. Well, we know for a fact, I know for a fact, others know for a fact that rail cybersecurity is very important. There's playbooks out there to cause disruptions to rail systems using a cyber attack. If I take the power to a train that depends on electricity to be guided, I've shut down the train system. Last week, I was on a call with someone else that I won't name, and we were talking about rail, and we were talking about the power grid, and he had just come back from London, and we were chatting, and we talked about the fact that somewhere within the city of London, there is a below the surface control mechanism of power that supplies the power to a very critical facility in a very famous building within the UK, and into like a myriad of trains. I forget what he told me, something like 60% of the train system within the UK, within the city of London, relies on this particular grid and the network that, in the substation. One substation could take out 60% of the train operations in the UK, is what his assessment was based on some data that he has. So that pivots me to the power grid. The power grid, the US has been, had exploratory attacks from adversaries related to the power grid. We know who they are. They've put implants. Recently, there was a story, one of the countries that's a US territory, Guam, had a bunch of malware in all of it, on a substantial number of its critical infrastructure systems that were put on by a foreign country that wanted to make sure that Guam would be debilitated if the US were to use Guam in order to launch, aircraft and ships and those kinds of things in the Indo-Pacific region. India is very concerned about the challenges in the Indo-Pacific. So rail, maritime cybersecurity, power, medical, there's something called the Internet of Medical Things, attacks against medical devices and facilities. I was told by someone that's in the medical cyber field that they worked with US law enforcement recently last year, there's a case that's not well publicized where there was a foreign dignitary that came for medical services in the US. His adversaries wanted to kill him. They found out what hospital he was going to have the surgery in. They found out what floor the operating room was that he was going to have the surgery in. And they devised an attack to take out the power and to debilitate the devices that are going to be used during that surgery. I think it was, as I understand from this person, it was detected. So they were able to thwart the attack, but it brought an alarm that medical devices, medical facilities are part of US cyber defense mechanism. And I developed something called Hack the Hospital that my prior organization is going to do a little bit of an exercise on. I have another vision for the future of that, but the Hack the Hospital event was to teach college kids as well as professionals about how medical devices that use protocols that are encrypted and proprietary, and they're supposed to be, let's just say that, okay, are dependent on the medical facility. If you go into any medical facility, the oxygen tanks and the chemicals that are used in operating rooms and in recovery rooms, a lot of times are stored in basements, okay? And they have a ton of safety mechanisms that regulate them that are all critical infrastructure OT-based devices that say what the pressure is, what the temperature is, how much gas to give in an operating room. If those regulated devices are tampered with or cyber attacked, the doctors are making decisions or providing medication based on false information. So we talk about medical, we talk about rail, we talked about the power grid. Let me talk about space, another hot area. Space is one of the largest growth areas. It probably is not quite as large as AI, but getting there. Why? Look what happened in Ukraine with the Russian cyber attack that took out the Viasat. That Viasat attack not only took out the ability of Ukraine to launch drones to get troop movements of the Russians as they were attacking their country, but because it was a network, the Viasat, LOE, low Earth orbit, LEO rather, low Earth orbit satellite constellations, and maybe some of their higher orbit, they're all sort of a network. They're part of a network that's communicating with ground stations. But that cyber attack, while it was aimed at Ukraine, it also impacted windmills that were using the Viasat system to power and to provide information to a windmill system that was generating power in Germany and a couple other countries, and those systems got taken out. And there was other collateral damage. One of my favorite books in cyber in the world is Sandworm. If you by a gentleman by the name of Andy Greenberg. I would say it's a mandatory reading. You get it as an audiobook. You don't have to, and I think now it may be in paperback. Anyone worth their weight in salt in cyber that I respect and I know thousands of people in the field, they've read Sandworm. Andy Greenberg's book is a must read. It talks about the 2015, 16 Sandworm Russian hacktivist group or proxy for the Russian government that launched attacks against Ukraine and a couple other countries that resulted in billions of dollars of collateral cyber damage. Again, while their target wasn't necessarily these other countries, because I'll give you one version of it. There's the NotPetya attack, which was embedded within I think it was NotPetya. There was a couple attacks to the Russians. Essentially, they put some malware in a maritime financial system, so that when ships would come in to unload, the idea was they wanted to take out the financial system so they couldn't get revenue. The country couldn't get revenue. But what happened is the malware jumped onto the networks of the ships, jumped on via satellite to networks back in the US and in other countries, and knocked out, encrypted, it was like a ransomware attack, and encrypted all the computers on the ships and in major corporations, major pharmaceuticals and stuff like that. And it really cost billions of dollars to recover from that attack. But read the book. It talks about at least two different major attacks that are well documented that everyone talks about. Relative to critical infrastructure, cyber, and how one attack took out. It also talks about the power grid attack against the Ukraine as well. Russia used Ukraine as a test bed for a lot of critical infrastructure cyber attacks. I won't completely spoil it for you, but the way Ukraine was able to, during that attack, was able to get their power grid is because they never completely took out their manual power grid management systems. While all the computing systems were knocked out by the Russian attack, they were able to get their grid up by using some of the manual controls to get some of their power. When I say their power, I mean their power went out. They didn't have power to anything. I mean, their ATM systems, their financial systems, everything was down. Last example of that is Estonia, country that I've had the honor and pleasure of visiting a couple of times. Look at the brass, I think it's called the brass soldier or the brass statue incident in Estonia. Estonia, which had been taken over by a number of countries, but multiple times by Russia. They're now independent, and their country has a border with Russia. Was attacked by Russian cyber adversaries, and it took out a lot of the systems in Estonia. That attack against Estonia, which took out financial systems and all kinds of things, the grid, Estonia said, never, ever again will we be subject and live victim to a cyber attack that takes out our critical infrastructure and other things. Estonia is now one of the most astute, most powerful cyber countries in the world. Probably at the same level of, a lot of people know that Israel is very, very savvy. I would say Estonia and Israel are typically number one, number two, or number three, and they probably switch places. But Israel is the most prolific creator of cyber technology. They are probably the number two next to the US. The US venture capital community buys a lot of Israeli technology. Israel is just genius at creating cyber solutions and technology. Another country that I've visited multiple times. So critical infrastructure cyber, satellite systems, everything from this phone to the computer that we're talking on, to the GPS in cars, to airline navigation, maritime navigation is dependent on a satellite system. It is well known that China and Russia and other countries that says, if I need to take an action, I'll just take out the low orbit and the other satellite constellations. That will take out the ability to launch drones. It would impact aviation. It would impact maritime. It would impact weapons targeting. Most weapons, autonomous weapons, are using GPS satellite navigation to hit their target. You know what I mean? I sat down and had dinner with a retired pilot when I was doing some stuff for Indo-PACOM a couple years ago, and he warned me that the US and other modern countries like India's dependency on pure satellite navigation for aviation and maritime is a danger to society. because if those satellites were to go out, how are you going to control those planes? Where are the manual systems that relies on the human and gives the human full control over that airplane or that ship? I'll tell you that I forget which country, there's at least two, have launched what they call ghost ships, basically ships that navigate themselves. They're cargo ships where they don't need a human to navigate. It's all done remotely, via GPS and satellite navigation. And they've been testing those cargo ships now for a while. They've been testing those ships, and just you can read the articles on that. Maritime is very big to India, as is aviation. A lot of the goods that India exports and the goods and services, or the goods that India imports, all comes via maritime cargo ships from other countries. And then in order for India to sustain its economy, the goods that it produces gets exported and typically gets put on a cargo vessel. It could get put on cargo planes as well. But maritime, the maritime industry and critical infrastructure around maritime is a whole discipline. The UK has the University of Plymouth. They have their cyber ship. They hold an annual conference. It's going to happen in November on maritime cyber. It's everything from the maritime positioning and GPS systems, spoofing. It's well known that when someone wants to hide a ship, they turn off the transponder and we lose sight of where that ship is in the ocean. Militaries do it for obvious reasons, but it's dangerous because if the navigation systems of other ships cannot see that ship, they could potentially run into that ship because they don't see it, because it doesn't appear on the satellite feeds that they're getting. The LNG gas storage, oil and gas and other chemicals that are stored in ports, whether you're transporting oil or LNG, those are targets of cyber attacks. It's well known that there's a playbook by a Middle Eastern country that was hacked. And in that playbook, it says, one of the ways we're going to debilitate the economy of whoever it is we're fighting against is to take out their ports. If you look at what the Russian attacks currently against Ukraine is, what are they doing? They're taking out their ports. They're taking out the storage bins on their ports. They're debilitating the ability of Ukraine to ship grain, which is part of its economic survival, which helps them to fuel their war effort. But it's also going to cause a major economic calamity for all the countries essentially that support Ukraine in its effort to defend itself against Russia, because Africa, I'm not sure if India is dependent on certain grains from Ukraine. India has a very robust farming capability, so I don't know that it's as dependent on imports from a country like Ukraine. But Ukraine does export a lot of grain and other produce to other countries that don't have the ability to grow in those grains. So that's maritime. So we talk about maritime, rail. We talked about aviation a little bit. We talked about satellite. Those are all, and we talked about the grid. Those are all critical infrastructures. You're in school. I'm going to pivot a little bit, to why cyber is continued broad. We talked about algorithms. I have trained and had internships with people that have studied psychology. Why would a psychology student be interested in cyber and be important to cyber? It goes back to disinformation and malign influence and algorithms that are targeting humans, or algorithms that are replicating human cognition or making attempts to pretend that they're human. Who best to be able to detect the impact of artificial intelligence that's designed to replicate human actions than someone that's trained in psychology, someone that's trained to understand human thinking and human decision-making and diseases and weaknesses in the human mind and the human psyche, if it's not a psychologist. So that's why there's opportunity for psychologists. Someone that's medically trained can flip into cyber because they can help design and monitor secure artificial intelligence or other driven robotic surgical devices and secure medical records, so on and so forth. Some of the best cyber teams that I've been able to form that have involved a combination of experienced military, college students and industry were multidiscipline teams. I put together a team for a program that I put together a couple of years ago, and it had students from engineering, psychology, math. Not everyone was a cyber student. They were like, well, I'm not a cyber person. I don't want to be a cyber person. I don't know how I can help the cyber team. When we did our cyber exercise, we had math, we had language, we had psychology, we had engineering. It wasn't just pure, I know how to use Wireshark and I know how to map a network, or without the talent of the engineer, of the psychologist, of the language trained person, the team would not have been successful in their cyber exercise. Language, big deal. In India, how many dialects do you guys have in India? You guys have a lot, from what I know, okay? The Russian language has a number of derivatives. The Mandarin and Chinese languages have a number of derivatives. Imagine a cyber attack that's launched against India in a language that does not go left or right or up and down. The name is escaping me of that, but the Cyrillic language. Imagine if it's in the code has Chinese language elements or Russian language elements. With all the cyber skills that you are good at, how helpful are you going to be if you don't understand the language, in the nomenclature that's being used in that cyber attack? I'm going to tell you, you're not going to be very, very useful. I've trained military personnel, and when the HMI or the computer screen or the HMI in an industrial control computer has something other than the English language, they're like, what do I do with that? It's like, yeah, you're going to have to Google Translate. You have to figure out what that is saying. It could be saying I've locked up all your computers, or it could be giving you some other message, but it's in a different language. So you have to understand how to do that. Some of the best, more powerful countries in the world are custom manufacturing cyber resilient industrial control devices that aren't sold commercially, just for the purpose of keeping other countries from being able to hack their devices, because those devices are proprietary to their country. They're not sold in the open market, and they're very specific types of devices to protect their power grid or their oil and gas. Not every country has that. I know the US definitely has some custom manufacturing devices. So critical infrastructure is important. Diversity in talent is important to be a good cyber person. The advent of AI and how it may replace the things that you're learning today, okay? So you have to keep your eye on, where is AI going? Am I creating the next solution that's going to eliminate hundreds of thousands of jobs in the cyber field, because the artificial intelligence is going to do the job better than a trained human? Now, every person that is in cyber, some of the best hackers in the world, I'm going to tell you, have never gone to college. I mentioned Sabu, not a college graduate, was facing almost 100 years in prison, okay? He hacked into everything, didn't even graduate from high school. He was born talented with a natural affinity for computers and algorithms and software and coding. He went wayward with that skill and became one of the most famous hackers in the world. He now is on the good side. He helps companies and government defend against hackers. Look at Sabu. His name is Hector Monsiger, who was born in, this young man should never have been the most famous hacker in the world. Nothing about him added up to a genius. Didn't graduate from high school, was in Puerto Rico, Spanish language, okay? Had no formal training at all. Became one of the most famous hackers in the world. Sabu, he was a hacktivist. He got paid by other countries to break into other things. Read up on Kevin Mitnick, who recently passed away as well. Another brilliant human. And we all know that Steve Jobs did not finish college. Bill Gates did not finish college before he started. Am I saying that to say college is bad? No. I'm saying that to say is, when you go out into your careers in cyber, don't prejudge people based on the pedigree of the university that they went to and the number of initials that they have behind their name. And let's talk a little bit about that. I believe college degrees are very important. I wish I would have finished college. I am going to college now, but I'm getting different knowledge bases. I don't know if I'll get a complete degree, but I finished a degree, but I'm taking law because I want to mix law and cyber. By the way, law, if you're interested in the law, cyber diplomacy, cyber warfare is all based on international law and the laws of your individual countries. We all know that Israel launched the first kinetic response to a cyber probe against their maritime port or their water supply, I think is the way the story goes. They launched missiles against the port of the country that they attributed the cyber probe. This country was probing their water supply, which is very important in the Middle East because water is precious. There's not a lot of it. And when the Israelis detected and they were able to say, this is this particular country, they launched missiles against that country. What are the rules of cyber warfare? Cyber warfare can kill. I've given you several examples of cyber warfare can kill. If I take out the navigation system or satellite system or rail system or the grid or the chemical management, I can blow up an entire city or an entire neighborhood or take down major things. Like people can die, okay? How are we going to regulate that? That's international cyber law, cyber treaties, cyber warfare. It is not a mature area of cyber policy, but it's an area that you and your very powerful country, your country is a nuclear power with a major other nuclear adversary right over your border in the form of Pakistan. Both, I would say India is probably more sophisticated cyber-wise than Pakistan, but what cyber attack will lead to war? What are the rules of cyber warfare? When is a cyber weapon that can kill people an act of war? Think about it. I don't have all the answers there. The US, in the form of Nathaniel Fick, has its first cyber diplomat at our State Department. That's how important understanding cyber and law are going to come together. Cyber insurance, another big area that's leading to lots of litigation, where people think, well, I have cyber insurance. If I get a ransomware attack, they're going to pay for everything. Not so fast. That's not the way insurance works. And there's a lot of litigation where people are saying, how come the insurance company did not pay for me to recover my business from a cyber attack? So certificates in college, I think, are very, very important. Again, I wish I would have gone to college. I hold a certification from Harvard Extension School in cyber risk mitigation. I'm finishing a certification in law. I am going to get a couple certifications, but they're foundational. There's a guy out on YouTube that I'm a big fan of, and he shows, he has a chart, and it shows where where certification fits, where cyber education fits, and then we have the last portion of this chart is employable cyber skills. That is where the action is. Can you translate your education and your certificates into employable skills? That's one of the things that I'm the best known for in the last 4 to 5 years. Teaching college kids going to really good schools with good GPAs that are smart as the day is long, how to freaking translate what they've been learning in college into functional cyber skills. You're competing in the world and in India and wherever you go off with other people that went to college and have good grades and have good GPAs and learned all the things that you studied, okay? They're just as good as you are. So what makes you different? Why would I want to hire you? If I have a bunch of intern positions or starting positions, or maybe I put you in a room full of young college students that don't really know much. They can't apply. Jobs in the real world of cyber is about what you can do. They're not asking you to tell them, what the internet stands for or explain the theory of IPv6 or the differences between IPv6 and IPv4 or some, or the 7 OSI layers or whatever, or the difference between the Purdue model and the OSI layer. They assume that you know these things depending on what field you're going into, but they could care less. They're not that they could care less. That's important, but that makes you equal to everyone. What can you do with that knowledge? I run an insurance company. I need a cyber defender or someone to run my cyber operations or do threat mitigation. Do you know how to do that? What would you do? How would you respond to a cyber threat? What tool would you use? Can you devise an incident response plan for my corporation? Can you get my corporation more cyber resilient because you actually can apply the NIST 800-171 or the IEC 62443? Those are the things that corporations want. The students that I've worked with over the years, I just got a long love letter from one of the interns that me and my team worked on, pretty much saying, oh my God, all of us got jobs. I'm the last one because I'm just now graduating. And if it wasn't for your program, the fact that you didn't take what I was learning in college and give me in our 8-week and 10-week program, give me a functional skill, I would not have been competitive in the employment market. I would have been unemployed despite the fact that I had a college degree, or I've been making less money. But when I went to the interview, I was able to say how I would use everything that I learned. I could tell them the tools, I could tell them why I would use the tools, I could tell them the process, I would tell them how I would pivot, how I would work with my team, because I'd actually done the work. In college, I learned what the thing was. but in your program, I learned how to do it and how to apply it. So as I close, and so because I know I probably went over time, and I want to give you some time to ask questions or opportunities, is learn well, but then apply what you've learned, even if you have to do it at home. Invest in applying what you've learned. That is what's going to make the difference. Not only it's going to make the difference in your career, it's going to teach you what you're really passionate about. Cyber is very, very wide and deep in the ability to do disciplines, but you must figure out what your passion is. Without passion, this doesn't matter. The brain has to connect to the heart. That's what's going to make you good at what you're doing. That's what's going to make you potentially wealthy at what you're doing. Passion combined with intellect. The two come together to make your career in cyber the best that you can be. The last thing you want to do is spend time. I can't tell you how many very sophisticated college students that have gone to some of the best schools in the US and some of the best military academies, when I have worked with them, have come in to say, I thought I wanted to be a reverse malware engineer, but I want nothing to do with reverse malware engineering. What I want to do is program programmable logical controllers or wire them and implement them on a network so that they're cyber resilient. They discovered that in the environment that I created for them. They didn't discover it in college. So be curious, stay perpetually curious, go beyond what you're learning in college, see what's coming around the corner that could take everything you're learning in college and make it a low-level career or make it a short-term career, because technology is going to replace that discipline, and find your passion. And with that, I'll open up the floor if there's time for questions. I'm looking at the chat. There's a lot of stuff in chat here. Any questions for me? I'll let our host determine where I go to next.
So guys, if you have any questions, you can shoot at them.
It's late. They're ready to go to bed or they're ready to go out. If there are any questions, I will close with a heartfelt thank you for inviting me. Hopefully, you've gotten some information about the diversity of cyber careers. We talked about critical infrastructure, which is an area that I specialize in, and there's 16 critical infrastructures as defined by the United States government's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. Within each of those 16 critical infrastructures are a plethora of cyber disciplines that can be applied. Find your passion, find where you're going to be good at, whether it's medical cyber, whether it's artificial intelligence, whether it's rail, whether it's space, whether it's autonomous vehicles, whether it's video, whether it's cryptology. We didn't talk about cryptology. Quantum computing is going to eventually will disrupt any mathematical algorithm-based encryption. There's no amount of contemporary mathematical algorithm today that we're using for encryption that will protect the information that's been encrypted by those algorithms today. Eventually, quantum will, within minutes and if not seconds, decrypt all that information. China, Russia, the US are all storing, infinibytes, a term that I'll invent here, of information. Today they can't encrypt about a message that you sent, but tomorrow or the next week or in the next year, they'll be able to decrypt that information. Quantum is going to do that. So right now in the US, your country, China, Russia, Israel, they're all working on quantum and post-quantum. He who wins the quantum race will decrypt the bulk of all of our secrets first, unless the country that loses or the countries that lose the quantum race have post-quantum defensive mechanisms. Just because I'm a geek, look at Elysium, and I'll just challenge you to look at something called Elysium. It is a natural substance, Elysium-241. I was at a conference with a bunch of people that are geniuses, and we had a dinner conversation about Elysium-241 and the Manhattan Project, which is the atom bomb. As you know, there's a huge movie here in the US, which I'm sure will make it to India, called Oppenheimer. But Elysium-241 are basically what comes after plutonium degrades. So nuclear power plants and nuclear energy, all these kinds of things, and nuclear bombs that are based on plutonium, the derivative, or when plutonium degrades, it turns into Elysium-241. there are projects right now based on Iridium 241 to use Iridium as the counter quantum computing capability, because it's a natural substance. I would bore you. It's quantum resistance. It's single use. Today the world is based on something called a two-fish random algorithm, and distributed keys. Look at a company called Blue Sky Tech, BLUE, the word sky, SKYTEC. Its founder is working with the Iridium 241 to create a quantum resistant crypto keys for navies. I don't know why we don't know about it. Like I told all the scientists that I was in the room talking to, like, if this is the ultimate or one of the ultimate ways to protect encrypted information that and its quantum resistance, why isn't everyone in the world using it? And the ability to commercialize it is probably the issue. How do you commercialize Iridium 241 into a viable quantum resistant ubiquitous solution? So that's how my brain thinks. I'm a polymath by nature. So I hop to different subjects, and it just hit me about Iridium 241 and the promise of its ability to do post-quantum encryption. But quantum, I forgot to mention quantum. Everyone's worried about AI. We got to worry about quantum, okay? And its ability to decrypt everything. And then space, because all of our nations are heavily dependent, more than we know, on satellites. All of our cell phone systems will cease to be as fun and as powerful as they are if the satellites that drive the information to them are on a certain unavailable. And with that, if there are no questions, I'll let you guys go. And I'll thank you again from the heart.
I think Pratik Ray has a question for you.
Okay.
Are you there, Pratik Ray? Okay, I guess he left. So you have covered a wide range of topics like railways, hospitals, space, smart grid, cargos, maritime, aviation. My God.
Cyber is a broad and deep field.
Yes, sir. It's very broad. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and experience, and for encouraging us to look beyond the surface and embrace the possibilities that await us in this dynamic and a critical domain. And thank you for being an essential part of our event and making it an enriching experience for all.
Yeah, and thank you for the invite. Thank you for spending your evening with me. And the best of luck to all of you. I'd love to see where you go, because I'm confident you're brilliant. You're obviously passionate and dedicated. And I think you're going to do great things for your country and the world as you go out in this very, very broad world of cyber and consistent changes and challenges to technology and the future of what we're all going to be doing or be impacted by. And I hope to have you out there in the world protecting me as I get older from artificial intelligence and quantum and people draining my bank account because they can get through all of my encryption methodologies. So the best of luck to you. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful evening, whatever's left of it. Take care.
Thank you, sir. So we have a small announcement. Abhishek will talk now.
Thank you, Elsie. Sir, I just wanted to summarize about OWASPSASTRA. Since when we started about it, and a very short story about OWASPSASTRA. And we started the chapter in the year of 2020. We started from zero, and we conducted sessions, webinars, and more kind of like we brought in different speakers. We talked about different topics on cybersecurity. And our core aim was to bring in knowledge to all the people over here, and to bring in awareness about cybersecurity to a lot of people out there who is interested in it. And we have been trying to bring in a common platform, or create a common platform for them to access the resource, to communicate and things. So eventually we created a Discord server in the year of 2021. We had around 300 people over it, and we had the server active around that time. And due to some kind of unavoidable circumstances, like the server went, it was inactive for some time. But still, after we got finalist with this talk, we have been working on the Discord server, and it's actually ready right now. And I'm very happy to announce you that we are glad to announce the server is back active right now. And I would also request you to join over our Discord server, which will be your support will be much appreciated. We'll be posting in the Discord link in the chat section. Please, I request the audience also to join on the Discord server. So thank you.
Thank you. Have a great evening, guys.
Thank you, sir.